Hello and welcome to the video. This is an overview and review of this thing here. This is a new soldering iron from SEQURE. I think that's how you pronounce that name. This is the MSS12. Now I'm interested in getting a little field kit together, so as well as having the blender, the gaffer tape, also having things like some cable ties, a LiPo powered hot glue gun, and also have a LiPo powered soldering iron as well. And this seems to pretty much fit the bill. With all that stuff in the bag, I should be able to fix 90% of all the problems we're going to get at the field without having to worry about a main supply. Now, I've been soldering for longer than I care to admit at this point, and the smell of solder and flux makes me feel like I'm 18 again. But then so does the smell of two-stroke oil. And I've always used Weller soldering stations in my professional and hobby capacity, but they are bulky, they're expensive, and they're not very portable. This one here is my second Weller unit. My previous one died about 2 years ago after giving about 30 years of loyal service. I like soldering irons that have the great ability to maintain the tip temperature even when you're asking them to do a lot, and I like irons that have changeable tips. That means that you can change the tip for the particular job that you're doing. Now, I've been looking for an iron that can handle not just the little jobs, but can run off a LiPo and handle the bigger jobs as well. Things like soldering up power connections and power things like XT60s, XT90s. So when I saw this released, I had to give it a try. I have tried some of the T80 style USB soldering irons in the past, and there are videos on the channel where I've had a look at those. And while I think they're great for smaller jobs, I've struggled to get them to handle all of the soldering needs that I get regularly involved in when I'm soldering things up like flight controllers and power cables. They just don't seem to have the oomph, even with a large tip. But this one does from all the specs. So while I show you how it comes in the box, let me go through the specifications. So again, this is the SEQURE MSS12. Working temperature is between 100 degrees C and 450 degrees C, which should be easily enough for pretty much anybody. Temperature units can be displayed in both degrees centigrade and degrees Fahrenheit. The menu display is a little 0.91 inch OLED that's very easy to read, and the input working voltage is a huge DC 12 to 25 volts. That really equates to 3S to a 6S LiPo battery. However, you can run it from a power supply from something like a laptop, or you can actually power it from high power USB things too. There is a sleep wake function, there is also protection reminders, it's firmware upgradable, there's a temperature calibration if you want to do that stuff as well. The product size itself, as you're spotting here, is really small and compact. You just slide the tip into the wand, push it all the way in, and then that is pretty much ready to go. Product size is 80 by 43 by 26 millimeters, and it weighs about 63 grams. You even get a little stand for the soldering iron along with a little sponge as well. Then you have the power cable for the LiPo battery, and the actual power unit itself is this little unit here. It feels like an aluminium case, has all the important information on it, and there's one simple control. To plug the soldering wand into the front, you just have to align the connector, push that in, and then do up the nut and you're set. Warm-up time, it reckons on this, with a 12-volt supply, is about 37 seconds. On a 19-volt supply, it's about 14, and on a 24-volt supply, it'll get your iron up from 30 to 300 degrees C in about 9 seconds. I'll show you some soldering in a minute. All you have to do is plug in your LiPo battery and the unit bursts into life. There's no on-off button as such. Rotating the control will allow you to select the temperature that you want. Pressing it in briefly will take it from stop mode to run mode, and that will start the tip heating up. Now I was using it here with a 4S battery and it was pulling about 2.2 amps when it was heating the iron, but once the iron was up to temperature it was only pulling about half an amp to about 1.1 amps just to maintain everything and keep it all working. So let me just zoom in and show you what this little screen looks like. It's a really small compact unit. Again, hitting the enter will start it working. This is a 19.4 volt setup, but you can see how quickly the temperature rises. Everything is covered in the manual, and pressing and holding the button allows you to go into the menus to change how everything works, so it's in the way that you want it to be. You can set all your defaults, how the buzzer's going to work, temperature compensation, how the idle works. So if you don't move the wand for a certain period of time, it'll go into idle mode and cool it down, which is a really cute feature. How the OLED is set up, what the brightness is and the direction, because you can flip it the other way around. Not sure why I'd really want to. The voltage stuff, so in here you can actually look at whether or not you have a low voltage alarm. I've been running this off LiPo here and it's worked incredibly well. And you also have the ability to calibrate the actual temperature at the end of the tip. But once you've run a tip a little bit, to be honest, it's pretty spot on. So let me show you how well this thing actually works. I've got the bigger tip installed on here. I actually purchased the separate tip to put it in so that I can do some of these larger things. And you can see how quickly on this 19.1 volt LiPo battery it gets up to 300 degrees C. That's pretty quick. That's probably faster than the Weller. And then I'm just have it in the Weller soldering station, just a little bit more safe than the little one that comes in the kit. And I'm going to desolder these big power connections. Now this tip here didn't come in the kit. I actually ordered this from Amazon. There's loads of T12 tips that are available. This just happens to be one of the big chunky ones, which is perfect for getting lots of heat in. Now I do like the fact that as I'm using this I can see that the temperature dropped momentarily there, and then it does a great job of putting the temperature back up, which makes desoldering even big chunky pads with nice big wires like this really simple and straightforward. So this, in the testing that I've done here, has worked spectacularly well, not just with the fine tips that's supplied for soldering tips and things onto flight controllers, which you would absolutely expect it to be good at, but also to do things like this, to actually take off things like big thick power connectors and solder things up like XT60s. It doesn't present any kind of problem with this. With the bigger tip, it handles it incredibly well. So my initial impression and playing with it over the last week and using it for the soldered jobs instead of my Weller, I am very impressed. I really like the fact that this thing can run from 3S to 6S and has a regular XT60 connector and has that really nice case. It means that this is a perfect thing to absolutely go in the bag to be part of my field kit. However, I think it's actually a lot better than that, and I'm going to keep this around because it's going to be incredibly handy on the bench when I want to do quick jobs as well. The menu is easy to navigate and the small screen is very clear and easy to see in all lighting conditions. One of the things that I've really welcomed is the ability, while I'm doing a big soldering job, heating up a large bit of metal to do something like a power connection, to actually be able to see what's happening with the temperature with the tip. That case makes it really easy to keep all this stuff together and make it super portable, so you can keep it on your desk for those desk jobs, but also take it to the field when you're going to fly in case something like a cable comes loose or gets snapped in a crash. The cable itself that goes from the unit to the wand, it is nice and flexible and very comfortable and easy to use. And all you need is a little water at the field for the sponge that's included in the kit and a little bit of solder, and you've really got everything you need. I personally would have liked it with more tips in the kit. It comes with this fine one. I ended up buying this larger one for things like power connections that I've just shown you how to bring it apart. The big one in particular has loads of surface area, and this little unit has no problem maintaining the tip temperature when it's heating a lot of stuff up. The one doesn't have the same field as the Weller. I'm used to soldering irons that have a little bit more heft around them, but using this I haven't really missed that finger shield that you have on the things like a soldering iron. It's actually slightly closer, my fingertips, to the end of the soldering iron. So when you're being very precise about doing the soldering, it's actually slightly easier to use. Do watch the first few times you use a new tip, as the temperature can overshoot, and that seems to be pretty standard with these kind of T12 style tips. Once you've had a couple of goes with it, you'll find that it will come up and hit the 300 degrees C pretty spot on, and that temperature, once it's there, is very steady even when you're using it in anger. In summary, I've seen reviews of other SEQURE soldering iron stations and I've liked the look at them. And again, I was interested in getting this in because this would run from a LiPo battery, pulling only about 2.2 amps to get the iron up to temperature, and using significantly less current to then actually do the soldering means that you could use pretty much any battery that you've got at the field between 3S and 6S to do any quick soldering job to get a model back in the air. From the initial soldering that I've done here, this can do everything that my Weller can. Plus, I can see where I'm getting a cold tip if I push things, and it'll fit in my pocket to take to the field. As I mentioned at the beginning, I got this in to be a field repair kit part, but I can easily see this being part of an everyday iron and have lots of success with it, which when you consider the price of this thing is quite an achievement. The only thing I'd recommend is get yourself some more tips of different sizes for the different jobs. That'll make sure you've got the right tip for whichever job you're trying to do with this, because the iron itself is very capable. From the testing that I've done here, this gets 5 stars. This is recommended. If you have tried one of the little USB T80 or T100 style soldering irons and you've struggled doing some of the larger pieces, this would be a great thing to move on to. Or if you're looking to get into soldering and you want a decent little setup that isn't going to cost the earth, this would be a great soldering station to consider too. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that, if you're trying to learn a topic, will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.